With all the NFL signings, we bring in the professor, John Clayton, one more time for some insight on not only the Seahawks, but the rest of the NFL with some big names changing teams. And John, we'll start with the latest with the Seahawks, and linebacker Bruce Irvin, their former first-round pick, is coming back to the team. What do you think of that move?
I look at it as a start, but they need more. I mean, Bruce Irvin comes in a little bit older, but he does have the pass rush that they want, but he's not the main guy. I think, depending on if they can get Jadeveon Clowney back, if they can maybe do something with Everson Griffin, because right now the pass rush guys, the edge rushers, are all pretty much out of the mix. They're either franchised or we just seen a whole bunch. I mean, Dante Fowler, for example, just getting the $16 million a year deal to go to the Atlanta Falcons. He's out of the mix right now. So, they got to start moving on something. And then, Unique Ngakwe is somebody that's also intriguing in a trade. But this is a good start getting Bruce Irvin. They wanted him when he was cut a couple years ago. He ended up going to Atlanta because it was home. He ended up getting a $4 million deal to go to Carolina and help out in a little bit of a 3-4 defense. But now he can come back, put his hand in the ground, and rush the quarterback in Seattle.
And that's the reason they've drafted him in the first round way back when, John, is just to be a pass rusher.
That's right. But then he was able to develop, and this is the good part about the fact you got Ken Norton Jr., who is going to be the defensive coordinator, and he's groomed all these guys, including Bruce Irvin, and so you can see there's going to be a fit there. But again, he's not going to be the main guy. I mean, they still need one more high-end pass rusher. They might want to wait to the draft, but that might be troublesome. But hey, they're still in the mix right now because there's still options available, whether it's going to be by trade or free agency.
What do you think this means for the rest of the linebacking core? Is it an insurance policy if Michael Kendricks doesn't come back? And what happens with KJ Wright?
I guess you could say it is, but I think they're pretty well covered at linebacker because remember, Cody Barton can slide into the strong side linebacker slot. I think they're going to go back into more nickel as opposed to 3 linebacker sets. They still have Ben Verkerven. Don't forget they have Shaquem Griffin. So they're pretty well covered. But also, you're right in the sense that you have the ability, if necessary, to put him at strong side linebacker. But my guess is going to just be in the rotation as a pass rusher.
How about the latest on Clowney? What do you think is going to happen there?
His market is going down. He certainly was right in asking for $21 to $23 million a year because he is one of the top 6 or 7 edge rushers in football. But the problem is without the sacks, because he's never had a double-digit sack season, that dropped his value. And so now most of the 4-3 teams have made their moves, and so the options are limited if he wants to go in a 4-3, and that's why that's important. You can get $3 to $4 million a year more as a 4-3 end than you can as a linebacker. And so you can see that his value has dropped now, where he may not even be able to get the $17 million a year deal that Eric Armstead has, and we'll see if he's going to be able to top what's there for Dante Fowler, who got $16 million a year to go to Atlanta. So he's still in the mix here in Seattle, but right now the numbers are coming down. That could be good for Seattle, but it also can be agonizing for Jadeveon Clowney.
Why do you think that is, John? Like, what happened there? Because, a week ago he was a $21 million man almost.
No, but also the key is if you can get the sacks, you can get the big dollars. And unfortunately, with no double-digit sack seasons, the disrupting part's good enough, but the sack part puts them over the top. And then you saw the trade that would happen with DeForest Buckner going from San Francisco to Indianapolis. Now he was able to get the $21 million because he's one of the top 3 or 4 inside guys in football as a defensive tackle. So he got that money, but now nobody else was able to get more than 20. And you can see the way some of the deals went. Robert Quinn ended up getting $14 million to go to Chicago. Vic Beasley ends up getting $12 million. You saw the $16 million for Dante Fowler. At this stage, and particularly now, you've got to. I know it's the first day of free agency, but it's really the third. The numbers are starting to dry up because the teams aren't there, particularly the 4-3 teams, to bid up his number.
The Giants were rumored to be big on Clowney, but is that even realistic that he would go to a team that isn't a contender?
No, I never saw that whatsoever because, first off, they're a 3-4 team. And, sure, if necessary for money, he can go back into the 3-4 and maybe make a few more dollars. But I don't think that they wanted to go on the high end and be able to pay for that edge rusher. They can do something, different. They got Blake Martinez. And remember, they also got Kyler Fackrell, who is a guy that is a decent edge rusher. 2 years ago, he had a real good season in Green Bay.
When you look at the rest of the Seahawks, and you were dead on with Jarran Reed, you said it would be a short-term deal somewhere between 11 and 12 million, and you nailed that. That was a necessity for the Seahawks team, you think?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, because you still don't want to retreat because you have 5 guys who are up on the defensive line in free agency, and you want to keep as many of them as you can. And so, they were talking at the combine at a $10 million a year level, and so then, realizing they weren't going to go $18 to $20 million on Jadeveon Clowney, kick it up a little bit. And, of course, naturally, like all players, you think you're going to get more than you can get. And so all of a sudden, here's Jaron Reed watching the deals came in a real good group of defensive tackles. And those deals all came in between $10 million and $13 million, and $13 million going to a defensive end from Pittsburgh who was going become a defensive tackle. So really, it came in 10 to 13 million, so he kind of cut the difference and took the 11 and a half. And of course, the bonus for him is that he was able to talk it into a 2-year deal where it puts him into free agency, possibly when they can expand the schedule to 17 games and make him even more valuable.
Yeah, that was a smart move for sure. You bring up Pittsburgh, and they bring in former Steeler BJ Finney to be on the offensive line. There was some speculation that if he comes in, because he spent almost half his time playing center for the Steelers when he played, does this affect Justin Britt, first of all?
It does now, yeah. Because, again, I never saw any urgency to do anything cap-wise at the center position with Britt. But now I think you can see things are going against Britt. I mean, for example, Joey Hunt ended up getting the restricted free agent, and he's the backup. Then you have Jordan Roos, who got the restricted free agent tender, and he filled in as the backup when Britt was out. And you also have Ethan Posick still on the roster. So now you have 3 options, and now a 4th with Finney. And Finney is a guy they've been looking at for the last couple of weeks and liked a lot. He's versatile. He's 318 pounds. When he was coming out of college, he wasn't drafted, but he was scheduled to be like the 4th best center in that draft, but injuries kind of knocked him out of that. And so, he got in 13 starts in Pittsburgh, and the versatility of guard and also playing center gives him something now that they can either, play at either position. But, yeah, I think right now it doesn't look too good for Justin Britt.
That's a shame, huh? That would be the epitome of NFL as a business.
Yeah, well, we saw that a couple years ago with Richard Sherman, because here's Richard Sherman coming off the Achilles injury, and they ended up cutting him. And here's Justin Britt with the unfortunate problem of having the ACL, and so it very well can happen. Now, maybe they might go to him for a pay cut. He might not want to do that, but also it's a year where it's not a lot of great centers in free agency in the draft. In the case of Finney, he seemed to be a good fit here because he's a big, thick guy that that is liked by Mike Solari, the offensive line coach, and so you can see that's a fit, and he has a chance to start.
Any other moves surprise you so far, at least starting with the Seahawks?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of gone like I thought it would. It'd be a little bit slow because they're not going to get into the first wave. I mean, certainly, they needed one pass rusher and they need another. That's why the Bruce Irvin move was good. So that's good. I thought certainly they were going to look and go for P.J. Walker, the quarterback out of the XFL. But right now, the NFL has put a hold on anybody trying to bid, even though the XFL is granting permission for anybody to sign. But that's all held up right now, so you can't do anything there. But overall, I think that they've done a good job of keeping their restricted free agents and their exclusive rights free agents. And of course, the big one too is getting Greg Olsen at tight end.
And tight end Luke Wilson becomes a 4th tight end, and he signs the other day and tweets out the fact that he's coming back for his 8th NFL season. What are your feelings on Luke?
Love it. I mean, I think he's great in the locker room. He's great for the team. And, people were kind of overreacting a week ago when Jordan Reed came in for a visit, because here's a tight end from Washington that had problems with concussions since August. But I think what they were looking for is like, okay, we think that Luke can come back close to the minimum. Would Jordan Reed be an option? So they talked to him, and then you saw what they did. They went back to Luke Wilson, and now we can have Techno Thursdays again.
How about the running back position? Are you hearing anything else as far as free agency, or there were just a few names kicked around, but are the Seahawks set in that position?
No, they're not. I mean, they're still looking around, and Alex Collins is on their radar. Robert Turbin is on their radar. One free agent from the Oakland Raiders, Isaiah Crowell, who had a good opening part to his career in Cleveland, then, of course, had an Achilles injury last year. I'm sure that would be kind of a minimum salary type option because he's coming off the Achilles. Now, remember, he had it at the beginning of the season, and so it's not like he's got that lag time that Will Disley has. So, I mean, he might be available. But, yeah, they're kind of bargain shopping there at the running back position, but also looking at guys who have been here before.
Well, when you look at the rest of the NFL, John, the Tom Brady move to Tampa Bay, did that surprise you?
To a degree. I mean, you could see that there was a strain going on in New England, and he had set himself up for the possibility of leaving, and now did leave. I think this is more on Bill Belichick than it is Tom Brady, because Tom did get his freedom, but he also took his pay down to $23 million. If there was an offer, I wouldn't be surprised if it was around that same number. Now, understand, that would be embarrassing to the greatest quarterback of all time, but also when you start to look, you had Phillip Rivers signing for $25 million, Drew Brees signing for $25 million. That's not too far off, but for a guy that has been there his entire career, gave them $30 million of room by taking 70 cents on the dollars, you would think that you want to compensate him at the end, but right now it turns out that Tampa Bay is compensating him at the end.
What does this do for Tampa Bay? I know other than season ticket sales, what else does it do?
Makes him a playoff contender. Maybe not the division, because he now has to go against Drew Brees and a more talented New Orleans Saints team. But here's the weird part right now that's going on in the NFC, because the NFC is so loaded with quarterbacks and so loaded with teams. So now you bring Brady over here, then you have the Nick Foles deal where he goes from Jacksonville to Chicago, and so now you have literally 12 guys, quarterbacks, making $20+ million in the NFC, and just only a handful of guys in the AFC, not on their rookie contracts. It's very bizarre. Now, again, that's also saying that Miami has Ryan Fitzgerald, but of course, I don't know where you want to put him. He's making like $5 million a year and is 38 years old. But it's a young AFC, it's an older NFC, and a lot of big contracts are lined up. But again, it's now turned another team into a playoff team, and then of course you also worry about Arizona, because look at the offseason that they're having right now. They get Jordan Phillips on the defensive line, a good guy that can help out their 3-4 defense, but they also get DeAndre Hopkins, who arguably at the age of 27 was an all-decade wide receiver. At least he's going to be in the first two teams, and so now they're even better on offense.
Yeah, that makes me think of that rest of the NFC West, and boy, if the Cardinals pick up the slack down there and bring their game up, that makes for a pretty strong division.
Yeah, it's the strongest division in football, and you could see some of how it's sorting out. There's a lot of change going on in the NFC South. The NFC East certainly was the weakest division probably in football last year, and the NFC North is pretty deep except for maybe Detroit. So, and then of course Chicago now gets a better quarterback. I don't know if he's going to start at the beginning of the year, but I do think what's going to end up happening is that at some point it's going to be like Ryan Tannehill. If Mitch Trubisky struggles like Marcus Mariota did, then they go to the other quarterback, who's now Nick Foles.
Hey, how about Case Keenum going to Cleveland, and does that send a message to Baker to get things going a little bit, or what do you make of that move?
It's just one, and just in case Baker doesn't do well. But remember, you got Kevin Stefanski there, who had been in Minnesota, and of course, he had some good success. Now, Pat Shurmur did a great job with Case. Case was able to have like a 70% passing percentage with Pat Shurmur when he was there as the Vikings offensive coordinator. But just gives them a backup that they're comfortable with. But again, if something goes wrong with Baker, then they can go to Case.
You see anybody on the horizon for Bill Belichick in New England?
Yeah, see, I thought Marcus Mariota was going to be, one of the main guys, but of course he ended up going over to the Las Vegas Raiders. Then, I can see Andy Dalton being a consideration. Dalton can come over in a trade. Would they indeed look at Jameis Winston, because he's available? It could be possible that Cam Newton could go there. But the problem is, with the way it is in the NFL right now, no player is allowed to fly to a team and have a physical. And with Cam coming off his injury, which is a Liz Frank injury, and he still needs about a month more to see the healing process go and do some things, that kind of puts him on hold. So right now, they're kind of in a holding pattern unless they make a quick deal for Andy Dalton.
Just a couple more, John. $25 million for Phillip Rivers in Indianapolis. What did you think of that move?
I think, Indianapolis, Baltimore, Arizona, they're among the three best teams in making moves as far as, and I think Indianapolis probably leads the pack. Now, again, you have to credit, the deal that they had for a fifth-round pick. They get Calais Campbell in Baltimore. Then they come back and they're able to get Michael Brockers at $10 million a year. That's pretty good. But with Indianapolis, now they get the quarterback that Frank Reich knows, has been with for 3 years, and can win. They've got a great offensive line. They picked up DeForest Buckner in the trade from San Francisco. So I think they're really in a spot right now where they've gone from a non-playoff team to a playoff team.
And you look at the draft and everything, it sure looks like, despite everything that's going on with the coronavirus, the NFL is doing its best to kind of stay on pace, huh?
Yeah, they're trying their best, and of course, there's a lot of changes. Like, for example, they're not at this stage putting all the cuts, putting all the free agent signings on the waiver wire because it's pending physicals, and nobody can really take any physicals. So that's kind of on hold right now. They're letting some of the teams announce some of the deals that are done, but it's a very different time because, and remember, look ahead the way this is going to be with the virus. I'm not sold that you're going to even see OTAs and mini camps. There's a good chance that they could be, held back. And the first time all these guys can get together can be when they go to the training camp, if by then. And so this is going to hurt the 5 new coaches that are trying to put in new systems. It's going to hurt the new quarterbacks going to new teams because they're not having a chance to work with the offense. But again, I know it's big in the NFL what's going on. It's bigger in basketball and NBA because they're missing games. But it's big right now in this town being in the epicenter for the virus. And I think we're all concerned how that's going.
One last question for you. When you get a coaching staff like Pete Carroll has and a GM like John Schneider, will this affect them that much with a veteran team and other teams like them?
They'll have. Well, here's where the advantage is going to be. As long as they don't make too many changes, then everything should fall in place, and they're going to have an advantage over the teams with the new coaches and the teams that are making a lot of changes. Because Russell Wilson's the quarterback. You know what the system is going to be. You know the starting wide receivers. As long as they don't make too many changes on the offensive line, that works. And as long as you can keep the core of the defense together, that's why the Jaron Reed was important to get back. It'd be great if they can get Jadeveon Clowney back and a couple more of the guys on defense. So that gives them an advantage. But, of course, I also say that knowing that the 49ers did suffer the trade loss of DeForest Buckner, but they're keeping their whole thing together. But it's much different when you look down with the Los Angeles Rams because they've lost at least 5 key guys on defense, and they got Andrew Whitworth back. They also got their starting center back, but they've taken some severe hits. And by Friday, they have to make a decision for some guarantees on Todd Gurley. They may trade him or release him.
One last question for you, John, because I can't let you go without asking you about America's team. Dak Prescott gets the tag. Did that surprise you, number one? And Amari Cooper gets his $100 million deal. What about your reaction to those two things?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he's only going to be on the tag at $33.1 million, but it didn't surprise me because there was no way they were going to let him go. And so he's got to now struggle. Now, of course, he's already not threatened, but said he may not do a lot in the off-season program, but for the most part, there may not be any off-season program. So now it's a matter of eventually trying to get him a deal. And Jerry Jones was going to get something done because, he was going to wait to the last minute to see if the CBA was going to be passed or not passed, because if it was not passed, he could have given the transition tag to Amari. But no, he had to keep Amari, and Amari got his $20 million a year, so I think he's happy about that. And Dak is happy about keeping Cooper, but right now he's not happy about getting the exclusive tag.
Lots of NFL news. I bet you're a busy man these days.
Absolutely. There's been more than 70 deals done, and technically it didn't start until 1 o'clock on Wednesday.
You are the man. Thanks a lot, John. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Paul.